You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast. We are waiting just a minute for everyone to engage the live stream. Remember, you can find the Billy Dees podcast on your favorite platform.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to X and all the other platforms that we're on. We're on a number of them, including LinkedIn, Facebook, and some others. Rumble now. That's a new addition. Going to talk to you about that in just a minute. On the line with me is Shamanisis. Shaman, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Billy. Good to see you.
We always wait just a moment for all of those live streams to lock on. And then I'll go ahead and start the podcast. We record the podcast separately. That's the one you'll hear on all the different platforms. All the different platforms, and we're on all the major platforms, so you can find the Billy Dees podcast on any of them. If you can't find it, you need to use the other internet. That's all I can tell you.
That's
all right.
funny.
One of the other internets. What was that? President Bush did that, right? The internets. Internets. Yeah. So okay. All right, we're good to go. I'm going to give it just a pause here a second. I'm going to roll right into it, and here we go. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. We are live Thursday nights, commentary, Shamanisis, and myself. Shaman, how are you today? A lot happening in your neck of the woods. You're in New York, and we're going to talk about that, right? A lot happening there.
Yeah, a lot of exciting things going on. You know that politics are really heating up, making things
Politics.
colorful in New York.
Yes, they are. We're going to talk about now. If you're hearing the replay on this, we are actually in production. This is May 23rd at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. While we're doing this, there's some things that are very fluid. I don't have clips because, like I said, stuff is breaking. But Trump is having a rally in the Bronx. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And so far, if all the media can be believed, everything that's coming up here, and sometimes things can get exaggerated one way or another. So I'll always preface that. But as it stands right now, it seems like this rally is very successful. And we're going to talk about what that means and how it's going to impact the election. Also, speaking of the election, we're going to talk a little bit about, I'm still holding to my prediction that I think it's very likely that the Democrats are going to change up. And I got a clip from Vivek Ramaswamy about that as well. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to touch on Memorial Day. I don't too often share personal journeys. I'm going to keep it short. I have an interesting relationship with Memorial Day because of my old man. So I'm going to round off the show with that, talking about Memorial Day. And of course, we always want to make sure that we give the proper gratitude and thanks for all the people in the service, because we just wouldn't have the world that we have today, not only for the United States, but the world today. If Hitler would have had his way, and any number of those types of individuals, it'd be a different world that we live in for sure. So we always want
absolutely.
we always want to acknowledge them. Okay, let's get into the Bronx. Interesting. I had an author interview the other day, which will be out next week. This guy grew up in the Bronx. So one of the things I asked him was, is it as tough as it's always portrayed? Like the Bronx Tale and all this other.
It is.
How would you now? You're from that neck of the woods. You're a New York.
Yeah, I'm originally from Tennessee, but I've lived in New York on and off for 25 years, so I know the city well.
Do the people in the Bronx, kids there, they know what a computer is, I presume.
They know what a computer is everywhere. I'm not sure where the governor got that.
Yeah, that was funny.
It was definitely a faux pas, but yeah, the Bronx are cool though. It's very, it's diverse. It's very patriotic, which I think surprises a lot of people, and and dynamic. It is. It's an exciting part of New York.
Yeah.
You don't want to be running around there without knowing where you're at and what's going on, because it can be dangerous, but so can Park Avenue and 60th.
Yeah, anymore that there's really no such thing as a safe place. There's some places that are safer than others, but that's about as far as you can go with it. The I guess everybody's excited about online. And here again, a little disclaimer here: if you're new to the program, we are not partisan. Okay, this is kind of we analyze things and so on. And to be honest, there hasn't been a whole lot to analyze with the Democrats because in
Their
terms of
whole agenda is Trump's bad, Trump's bad, Trump's bad.
yeah, it's either Trump's bad or my uncle is eaten by cannibals.
Oh,
So
God.
there's not a whole lot to seriously delve into, and just
Well,
being honest,
I think that's actually a good point, Billy, because I think it shows just how frozen they've been to the point
yeah,
where they're not creating great stories,
yeah.
which is a shame because it could have helped them a lot. They've been so busy like backing Biden and pretending that there was nothing wrong that now they have said nothing. And
Yes.
they're now finding out that what's been going on the whole time is they've been losing people to Trump.
I did a commentary a couple of weeks ago that got a lot of attention only because
A few 100,000
all right, yeah, all right.
listens is not a little bit of attention.
It was an anomaly. I don't know. I mean, the listens do fairly well, but that was off the charts. That was almost 200,000, and plus the impressions were close to 500,000. And most of it, no, not most of it was positive, but I got a lot of negative comments simply because the title was Democrats are on the path to defeat and they have no one to blame but themselves. And this was not a partisan rant. This was an analysis of how they have had 4 years to cultivate a candidate.
Yeah,
They knew
yeah.
they knew this day was coming. Okay, well, as soon as Biden won that
Arrogance,
election with
arrogance. It is
arrogance,
literally the breathtaking arrogance because they have been in the big appendage waltzing around since they, tried to jail Trump and the arrogance of which they've been behaving for years through the pandemic and now. I mean, they all got real cocky when
yeah.
the pandemic and closures were going on because the control that they were allowed, and I think that kind of messed with their minds, and they forgot that there was actually a future that they were supposed to be getting ready for.
Yeah. Yeah, I said this before. I believe that in 2020 was such a weird time in terms of COVID and everything else. I suspected from the very beginning that Biden was put in place as the anti-vote to Trump.
Mhm.
Okay, anybody but Trump, and he caught that vote. He took advantage of the anti-Trump vote. And being that he was the age that he was, and a lot of other things, and the other problems that come with him, like the crazy stories, the wild stories, and some of the history he's had of off the wall comments when he was young and supposedly perfectly lucid. I kind of figured, okay, they got 4 years now. They got Trump out of there,
Mhm.
and this guy is going to be a one and done. Okay, and they're going to come up with a candidate. They're going to come up with another Clinton. They're going to come up with another Obama. They're going to come up with somebody like that
Mhm.
is going to capture the imagination of the people and actually have a person to vote for. But they
Yeah.
didn't.
Well, I think this proves how delusional, and I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm in the middle. I mean, I if never mind. That's a whole other story. I honestly think they got frozen. At first, there was the arrogance, the closures, the power trips that they were all on, the lack of work actually going on with our politicians because they could take advantage of the closures to do almost nothing,
Yeah,
except pass it, agendas that suited their paychecks. But then you add to that, I think the Democratic Party got frozen when they chose a candidate for her marketability to be vice
hmm,
president. I mean, I let's be honest, she was chosen for very specific reasons that had absolutely nothing to do with her, but then there were so many other amazing African American women who
yeah,
could have fit that role and been incredible leaders. We have some incredible female leaders in the military. And, you get someone like a Kamala in there who can't even be allowed to, I mean, she's, like, basically not allowed to speak anymore, and you would have thought when that became obvious, especially post-closure, when she started to reappear and make the same boo-boos, you would have thought that they would have spent those 2 years, but I really think that they just bought into this whole delusional idea that Biden was fine,
yeah.
and now they're finding out that people are scared of Biden.
And it's a perfect storm of a lot of things for them. They bullied people around with the wokeism,
Oh,
with the political
badly.
correctness,
Yeah.
uh, and it got to the point where it actually hurt the people they were claiming to want to help.
Mhm.
I know I have a lot of really good friends in the LGBT plus community, and a lot of them tell me privately, and they're even afraid to say it with their other friends, that a lot of these radical ideas are hurting their cause. Their whole
Oh, yeah.
cause was built on, we're just like everybody else, we just love somebody different. And there's this mob mentality. If you say something that goes against that ideology, everybody's coming after you, and there's starting to be a rebellion now. So that's feeding
Oh,
into this
yeah.
Trump stuff too.
Yeah, it is, and I think all of that is falls in the same family of their inability to have sincere and honest conversation that is rooted in truth and actual fact. The closures and a lot of the lies told about vaccines and things like that, which is a whole other episode. But the inability to even acknowledge the fact that even the pharmaceutical companies are now apologizing for some of the mistakes that were
Oh
made
yeah.
during the closures, and they still won't speak to about things from a sincere and honest place, like the whole,
No.
let's pretend that Biden's okay when it's obvious. I mean, even the news media, the mass media is now talking about it,
Yeah.
which shows you that that delusion's now coming home to roost. And so it all goes back to the inability, the desire to lecture other people of how to live while simultaneously being incapable of having sincere and honest conversation about truth.
Yeah. What happened with COVID here again. That's a whole nother episode. Excuse me, but the fact of the matter is people like Fauci are not what they were portrayed to be. And and we can mince it out and how bad he really is. But the point is he's not what he was made out to be. A lot of the drugs that were talked about to treat COVID are now becoming accepted as possible treatments. The vaccine has problems, and I gotta say, Europe has been much more forthcoming about some of the statistics there than the United States has
And the
been.
big difference there is that the big pharmaceutical companies do not own the politicians and the media
Absolutely,
in the same way that they really own the politicians and mass media in America. Like, it is shocking just how
yeah,
much of that, like, the Fauci went on a power trip while simultaneously the media was literally saying, parroting everything he said, because he basically worked for big pharma. Doesn't he
yeah,
work for big pharma now?
exactly. So there's a lot of that, and actually, Europe is way ahead of the curve in terms of releasing a lot of research
Yeah.
when it comes to trans medications, a lot of the long-term effects they may have. And here again, this doesn't mean that you're anti anything. I don't care if we're talking about what's commonly referred to as a boob job, breast augmentation. If I say, well, you got to be careful because there's a lot of women who've had autoimmune problems and things like that with those things. And then everybody jump at, well, you're anti-woman. You don't want women to look good. That's not it at all. If you can't even raise a concern, if you can't even talk about something that could possibly harm someone, without being silenced and branded a hater and all this other stuff, there's no place for the conversation to go, and that's what a lot of people are getting tired of.
Well, and
Uh,
they've just kept peddling that same crap about every other topic. Like, it started with the pandemic, and then they were like, "Oh, we're just gonna apply this. There is no other opinion. You're not allowed to have another opinion to every topic, and nobody can mention that Biden's having trouble when it's obvious in every video that he's
yeah,
having issues." And I have a mad respect for the president, the office of the president, but
I
we have to learn to be honest about situations if we're going to actually make things better for the
absolutely,
people.
you know, and yeah, Biden is another one. I spoke about last week how I bought some ill will by being at a business meeting, and I was doing some Biden impressions,
Yeah.
and uh, the fact of the matter is I have nothing. If I were to meet President Biden, I would treat him with nothing but respect. I mean, I'm meeting the
Oh, of
president of the United
course, of
States.
course. I mean, he's done a lot, whether you like him or not or agree with
Yeah.
everything. He has committed his life to public service,
Yep.
whether you
And
respect him or not as a human being for every decisions he's ever made. The office
no,
of president demands respect.
I absolutely agree. And there's some of these people that shout things at any president. I don't care if it's Obama. I
Yeah.
don't care if it's Hillary Clinton. Of course, she wasn't president. You get my point. These types of figures, these people who are at the very top of the political sector, shouting things at them, cornering them in restaurants, all these showing up at private events. And this isn't that has nothing to do with free speech. That's
Yeah.
bullshit.
And you know what's
So
not helping the Democrats? Democrats, stop trotting people like Hillary Clinton out to
yeah,
say things that are insulting to most people. The last video that she did was about TikTok and freedom of speech is so insulting.
yeah.
I'm not sure if she can approach anything without being condescending. Isn't she the one that called people, trash or there's this
The deplorables.
deplorables? Yes, stop trotting the woman out who called people, the people, deplorables.
Yeah, people. Yeah, she was
It's not
referring to
helping
people.
your case.
Yeah, she was referring to the people that supported Trump at the time.
Oh, yeah, I know, and there's
Um,
a lot more of those now,
oh, there's a lot
FYI.
more, and Bill Maher, to his credit, says if you don't want to like Trump, that's fine, but you can't label everybody that supports him, which is roughly half the country, as ding dongs and haters and all these other things. You just can't do that.
Well,
You
yeah,
have to
which
understand,
brings
why
us
is this person so popular? Go ahead.
yeah, and which brings us back to the Bronx. So, you and I started talking about this 6 months ago, and both of us agreed that the Democrats were being delusional about Trump, and, we
Yeah,
predicted that Trump was going to make a huge surge, that the arrests and all of the court stuff was gonna do nothing but serve to actually get him more fans because we all feel this pressure from a world that is gotten out of control due to corporate greed and paid off politicians
yep,
who are can somehow pass acts and laws that help out their PACs, their special interest groups, and send billions and whatever to other countries, but they can't take care of the average person or help deal with corporate greed, which is out of control. And while simultaneously they want to tell everybody what to do. Anyway, yeah, the Bronx is a section of New York, which is very, very mixed and very dynamic, and a lot of immigrants. It has been a Democratic, um, city,
yeah.
if you will, for
Oh yeah,
since Reagan, and I think for
absolutely.
the last 100 years. And so historically, Trump would never go to the Bronx
Yeah,
because you wouldn't get support there. As a matter of fact, you might risk getting run out of town because the folks in the Bronx don't play around. But
right.
from what the videos I've seen, and I've seen a lot of them, a lot of people have come out to support him in the Bronx, and it looks like a wave of people,
Yeah,
and if that wave is any indication of how they're going to vote, it's very telling about the presidential
yeah.
election.
Yeah, that area hasn't gone red since Reagan, and of course Reagan was famous for what were called Reagan Democrats at the time. Um, and that would be my question. That's kind of one of the questions I have in our headline here. If it is true that these videos are accurate, and we're looking at 20 or 30,000 people there, and there's mad support for Trump. And it appears, according to this video, you're talking about a cross section of society that all walks of life, all ethnicities, everything, just screaming and jumping up and down when his car goes by. So if this is true, what does that mean for the Democrats?
It means there's a red wave going through Democrat territory, and the Democrats are fucked.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see. I would have to say right now, if I was a Democratic advisor, I would be saying we have to do something here.
Mhm.
So that brings us to the debate, and the debate is coming up in June, and very early for a debate. And I've been saying all along, and I don't know if this is going to play out to be true or not, but if you are a political advisor and you're in the operations of politics and you are working for Trump or you're working for RFK, and we haven't mentioned him yet, the RFK Jr. thing is still very much active. He's getting on the ballot on more and more states all the time. There's another state that's got him on the ballot. Okay. If I'm working for either of those two campaigns, and we're adjusting and making adjustments to Biden. You have to be very careful about not skewing your campaign toward how out of touch Biden is, because he may not be the candidate. I'm going
You've
to,
been saying that for a while now.
yeah,
I
and
I would
I've
love
heard a
to know
lot.
where you get your info.
I've heard Michelle Obama, which at this time is just a rumor. Okay, can't verify it, can't say it's going to happen. She's a possibility. And another one,
I actually saw an interview with her where she said she had no interest.
yeah, I
But you
know
have
she's
to
saying that.
actually want it, and I mean, she said it in a way that made me pretty sure that she's like, no, I'm enjoying life right now. No
Yeah,
thanks."
and that might be okay. I don't know. I would have to predict if there the other name. I got a lot of buddies down in Florida, and the talk down in political circles down in Florida that Hillary Clinton could make a comeback.
That is
I
not going to help the Democratic Party. As a matter of
no,
fact, it might
and
actually send more people running for the hills.
I actually feel that either one of those two, Michelle Obama would probably be the better choice for for a lot of reasons. She's got a likability factor that's better than Hillary. However, we talked about this before. It's the same names all the time. It's Biden, it's Clinton, it's Obama, it's Trump, it's Bush. It's the
It should
same
have been
names.
Kennedy.
Should have
If
been
they had had
Kennedy.
their heads screwed on straight and hadn't been sucking up to the rest of the family, they would have a very viable candidate right now,
Yeah.
which would probably take Trump if he had the support of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, actually, there's been some polls on this. If you take one of the candidates out and you run Kennedy against Biden, he wins wholeheartedly. If you take Biden out and Kennedy runs against Trump, he wins by a narrow margin. So, what's going against him now, his analysis of that is that being an independent and being something that's relatively new ground, except for some flirtation with Perot there a number of decades ago. What he believes is true is with a three-way race, everybody's afraid if they vote for him, it's going to mean the person that they hate worse out of the other two is going to be in there. So, which I do believe. So, anybody that's considering voting for Kennedy, they think, well, if you're a Trump lover, you're thinking, well, I might get Biden elected, and if you're a Biden lover, you might think, well, I might get Trump elected. So that's kind of hurting him a little bit. And I really don't know what's going on with the debates. He cited a bunch of debates that showed that he should be included in the debates. But there's other ones that really have him kind of low in comparison with that 15% number. I mean, he's down around 10, which is significantly low if that's the case, if these are all true. So anyway, getting back to what I was saying about don't count on Biden being in there. My buddy Vivek has this to say about that exact same situation.
Vivek, you say this might be a setup. Why?
Yeah. I believe it is a setup, Laura, and here's how it's working. Why did Biden pull this 180 all of a sudden, and why did the Democrats let him do it? Let's put together some facts here. On one hand, CNN is hosting it. They're going to prop up Biden, try to make him look as good as possible. But also note, this is the earliest ever presidential debate in recorded American history, in June. Why is that? This is a Hail Mary attempt for Biden as his numbers are tanking. This is their last chance to give him a desperate attempt to succeed. And if he doesn't, as I expect will be the case, that gives them enough time to swap out somebody else for the nomination. That's what's going on. Set him up for the best possible look you can give him. It's not a neutral forum. It's CNN. Do the 180 as he's tanking. But if he fails, they have enough time to prop up a new puppet. That's what I think is going on.
Okay.
I
would agree with
actually agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm telling you right now, if you're taking a lot of this Bronx stuff and you're like all smiling, Trump has got it, I would be very careful. Because I'm not sure who you're going to be running against. And there's a lot of names that are far better than Obama and Clinton. Okay. I mean, they get it. I don't think Tulsi's would end up in the Democratic Party again. But if she did, man, all the polls that you're taking right now, you can throw them out the window. Same goes if Kennedy somehow or other ends up back into the Democratic mix. take all those polls and throw them out the window.
Yeah, the
So
best move they could make would be to go to him with a mea culpa and make him the candidate. Like, it literally is the most strategic, intelligent move. I'm not sure if he would do it. Sorry.
Yeah.
I've gotta make sure I'm speaking into my mic with my
Yes,
sexy
speak into the mic.
tone voice.
Yeah, very
Uh,
good.
yeah, no, the smartest thing the Democrats could do would be to let Biden go retire, bring in Kennedy, do a mea culpa, everybody's huggy kissy, give him that protection that he shamelessly still needs. And they would have a real fighting chance to keep the White House. But if they don't do something, I don't think that the debates are going to help. And I think pulling a switcheroo at the last minute is not going to help them, because people will have had too long to think about whether or not they would go for Trump. And I don't see them flipping back.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I don't know. It's going to be tough. I can't imagine, and I'm not saying this to be cruel. You watch some of the video of President Biden, and to honestly tell me he's going to be president until 2029.
No, I don't even need my intuition for that. He's just not he doesn't have the physical stamina for it. And I'm really
Yep.
not trying to be insulting. I want
Mm.
people to understand I have a lot of respect. I do.
Yep.
But like, we have to be able to speak about facts, especially about somebody that the rest of the international community is making fun of.
Yeah, this is to use a phrase that Biden uses. This is no joke. Okay. If you check out some of and every once in a while, BBC, every once in a while, Australian TV, there's a number of different ones. None of them put him in a good light. And some of the parodies are far worse than what you have here in the United States, about somebody coming up to the podium and, stammering around and not sure, trying to open doors that aren't there. These are all cruel, maybe, but that's the impression that the world is having right now. So enough about that. Memorial Day weekend coming up. You have any big plans for Memorial Day, Shaman?
You know what? I'm going to be working on my book and some events that I've got coming up. Probably get to the beach and do a lot of exercising. I got to get my summer bod on.
You got to get your summer bod on. Okay, well, that's. I wish I had a summer bod.
My summer bod.
Yeah,
but the bun is part of the bod.
yeah, I said summer bod. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. I told the audience in some of the posts earlier before this podcast that I would share, and I don't normally talk too much about personal stuff because I don't know that it's that interesting, but I've had an interesting relationship with Memorial Day. Memorial Day has been odd, has been a struggle for me over the years. My old man, and I'm referring to my father, was a veteran, combat veteran. His brother was as well. And my dad's father, now I want to be very clear here. I'm talking about my father's family, my mother's grandparents and everybody, just the saltiest, sweetest people ever. Dad's side of the family, not so much. And my grandfather, my dad's dad, was basically responsible for his mother's death when he was very small. He was very abusive. And he didn't outright kill her, but he abused her so much. He threw her out of the house one night. It was cold, and she died of exposure. So he, at that time, now this is years ago, when I tell people that my dad was a World War II veteran, they say, well, you mean your grandfather? And I said, no, my dad had me very late in life. He had a young wife. And so he was he was a World War II veteran. But leading up to this, because of the fact that back then, and I'm probably still today, depending on what happens, you can get away with doing something like that. His dad was never punished for that, but his dad was arrested for illegal activity involving gambling. Very rough bunch of people. Okay. And he grew up in orphanages. My dad did. And he got beat in those orphanages, so he ran away. And he actually grew up in what was referred to at the time as an Italian ghetto in New York. He was taken in by an Italian family. And he made money on the streets by fighting in back alleys where people would bet on fights. That's how he made
Oh,
money.
yeah, that very common in the Italian,
Yeah.
areas
And
everywhere.
I'll tell you what, quote unquote, saved him a little bit. I don't know how it happened, but he somehow ended up in technical school and he got some engineering training. And when the war broke out, he wanted to fight. So he joined, but they wanted his experience and he ended up getting put on a very special Army, not Army, excuse me, Navy engineer group. As a matter of fact, you can Google him up. He comes up. My old man's there. And this was a part of the engineer corps that was in the Pacific Ocean. And when they would go to a lot of these small islands and design airstrips, how to make them quick and get equipment in and out of there. And they were high value targets. So they were shot at quite a bit. And his brother, though, went into the infantry. And his brother was really the only family he had because obviously his family was, not good at all.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, his brother got killed in Okinawa. And I think that put him over the edge. At this point, my dad became a very, very bitter man. And what was a tad insult to injury, his brother was killed by a sniper when the battle was already over and decided. So that really put him up. That really put him up. Yeah, that really put him over the edge. So when he got back to the United States, and my dad was very smart, very good technically, really good with math. He could do sine and cosine and tangent and cotangent, all that shit in his head. Yeah, he was smart. And I remember a little story telling me that when he was in the Pacific when the atomic bomb was dropped, and he was asking, now he knew what atomic meant, but that was a word just like today, where it was atomic everything, atomic fireballs, atomic car wash, and atomic this and that. So he went to his CO, and he said, "Now, was this really an atomic bomb?" And his CO said, "Yeah, man, it was an atomic bomb." And my dad said, "I knew right there he didn't know shit. He wasn't sure. He wasn't sure that it was an actual atomic bomb until he got back to the United States." But anyway, he between his childhood and that experience of losing his brother, he was a very bitter man. Now, I got to tell you, there was an odd dichotomy to my dad because, like I said, he was very, very smart, good provider, very loyal to my mom. I mean, I never have any question at all. My dad was 100% loyal. Absolutely. He was also very red, white, and blue, always law and order, which was in a stark contrast to his background because I was born about the time his dad died, and his dad was a POS then. And in a lot of trouble. And that whole family was in a lot of trouble. And he had every excuse to go wrong. Like these people are, they're in some kind of court for killing a bunch of people. And it's because my mom didn't love me as much as he loved my brother. And there was none of that bullshit. I mean, if he had a traumatic childhood, he had every opportunity to get involved in illegal activity. He had every opportunity to be loan sharking and some of the other stuff that my cousins were doing. None of that. He was about as straight laced as you can get, but he did have typical PTSD symptoms in that he was extremely violent. Now, he never hit me or my mom. He came close to hitting me a few times, but
I can only imagine, Billy.
Yeah, and I can't say I blame him, but he was extremely violent. And I was exposed to that as a child. And I remember one time my mom told me, now he was never a bully, but you didn't cross him. And there was a few times, I won't get into the details here, with a couple of motorcycle guys that thought they were pretty bad until they picked on the wrong guy. And my mom always told me, when you're out with your dad and something starts to go down, this is exactly what she said. She said, something starts to go down with your dad. She said, you just run. It don't matter where to, we will find you eventually. You just get the hell out of there.
I love the old school folks. Like they were just like, you just run for the hills and we'll deal with it.
Run. And, that kind of violence, I could feel the fear that some of these people had after they started something with my dad.
Because they could see you.
The fear was palatable. And I'll tell you, my dad got red. He froth. He looked like that some bitch had rabies. I mean, he was just terrifying, and he was a skilled fighter. You know, you're talking about somebody who grew up in the streets, was in the military,
Yeah, he was in
and
World War II, which
yeah,
will strip away, those behaviors that are so ingrained in us and bring out the beast.
sure. And nobody messed with my old man. And I had friends that were afraid to come to the house because everybody had some kind of story about him in the neighborhood. Now he never, like I said, he didn't pick on innocent people, but he would go into a rage and just bust stuff up. He bust up the house a couple times. And here again, this is very frightening when you're 5 or 6 years old, when a big man throws a couch through the living room and it just rolls and just busts everything, the coffee table and everything in its path, the TV, everything. That's very scary.
Wow, it's like the Hulk.
Yeah, and so anyway, the dichotomy was straight upstanding citizen over here, and then powder keg over here. My mom used to say it was like living with a time bomb. Perfectly fine most of the time, but you didn't know when it was going to go off. And in some ways, he kept me on the straight and narrow. I can tell you for sure, I never got involved with drugs because of my old man. Because I was more afraid of my dad than I was the police.
Oh yeah.
And so there's some good things about it. But like I said, there was an odd dichotomy: brilliant man, terrifying man; brilliant man, terrifying man. And there was always these two Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde things going on. I'll leave you with this. I just want to leave one good story. Well, there's a couple of good stories about my dad, but I'll leave you with one. When he was in the Navy, they were towing in a boat that had been damaged, and they were about 2 or 3 miles out to sea. My dad was very athletic, and the boat that they were towing started taking on water, and it sank, and they couldn't get it hooked in time, and it took the boat that they were on as well down. And a lot of guys were injured. They were bleeding. And this was in shark-infested waters. Now, my dad, being athletic as he was, could have very easily made it to shore. A 2-mile swim for my old man was nothing. But he gathered up all the men, made sure they were accounted for, made sure they got everybody that they knew survived the incident. And he put them in groups. Injured people were getting helped, and they started moving them toward the shore. And the sharks came cruising. And my dad said that when these sharks would go under you, you could feel the water being displaced. They would go under you, and you could feel the water rush up as they were displacing water as they went under you.
It's very terrifying.
Yeah. And nobody got attacked, but he got everybody to shore. And here's somebody who could have saved himself very easily. So on one hand, there's a Superman story. And then there's the other story I have where somebody rang the doorbell when he was trying to take a nap, and he went down the basement and pulled all the wires out of the ceiling. Okay. So
oh God, that is so that generation.
Yeah. So anyway, I do believe, without going into a lot of detail here, I do believe my dad had a death wish. He went into some situations with both guns blazing that would surely have gotten him killed. And my only thing is people thought he was so effing crazy that he must have a gun or something. Nobody ever fucked with him. Once he got mad at him, let him do what he wants. And I always thought that he was either gonna have a massive heart attack, he was gonna have a brain aneurysm, or somebody was gonna kill him. That was how my dad was gonna go. So I was a senior in high school, getting ready to graduate. Dad starts saying that he don't feel very good. He goes to a couple different doctors. They tell him he's eating more than he thought he was, and some other shit. And finally, he goes to my mom picked a name out of the phone book, a doctor's name out of the phone book, and they went to this young doctor who was my doctor for many years after this. But he told my dad on that first meeting, "You're a very sick man." And they put him in the hospital. They told him to go straight to the hospital from the office that they were at. And he turned out that he had cancer, and they told him he had about 2 weeks to live, and he lived 9 days. He lived 9 days.
Wow.
And I didn't expect him to go like that. Because at that time he was already weak, and by the time he got to the hospital, a couple days go by, he couldn't get out of bed. The decline was steep. And I didn't expect to see him get weak and die. And then, not that is, one way or the other, there's really no good way to die. But I really thought he was going to go out in a blaze of glory.
Mhm.
And I don't know what to say about that, other than the whole point of this story is one of the last things he said to my mom was, make sure that I get a flag on Memorial Day. And
He's a
that always,
soldier. He was
that
always a
always,
soldier at
that
heart.
always, and you're talking about a guy who didn't even want last rites. I mean, you can talk about being a badass, but when you're told you have hours to live and you don't, you don't want any of that. I mean, that's the real deal.
Yeah. I think
And
he probably saw being a soldier as the thing that saved him in many ways.
yeah, well,
That's
his
just what
exact words were, "I've taken care of myself my whole life. I don't need any help now." And that that Memorial Day thing always stuck with me. That after all the shit that he had been through, after all the grief that experience put him through, that he was still loyal to the country and loyal to the flag. And as it turned out, that was over Memorial Day weekend, the year that I graduated. I went to my dad's funeral in the morning and my commencement that night.
Wow.
And Dad always used to say he would never live to see me graduate, and he missed it by an afternoon.
Wow.
Uh, so it's always been this little ritual now. I used to take my mom when she was alive and healthy. The last couple of years she was too ill to go to the gravesite, but I used to take my mom every year, and we would go to the gravesite, make sure he had the flag. And I'll probably do that this year. I might take some video while I'm out there. And here again, I'm somebody, there's nothing there. My dad ain't there. There's nothing there. It's a plot of ground. It's a plot of grass. There ain't
It's a
shit there.
it's ceremonial. It really
Yeah,
is.
but I
People
still feel
people
this.
misunderstand the importance of doing ceremony around important parts of our lives, and it's a ceremony that
Yeah.
has a value not just for you, but for him as well, even today, which is hard for people to understand. But energy does not disappear; it just changes form.
Well, that's why I kind of wanted to get your reaction to that story. What is your reaction?
Your father was from a generation of men where toxic masculinity was the rule, not the exception. Many of them fought in the war and saw things that today's audiences could not handle in real life,
Yeah.
and they were not allowed to have emotional or mental health or and mental and emotional health issues. That was seen as so bad. Like, to even admit to that was you would get you treated like you were broken for the rest of your life, even though it's an experience that can actually be worked through. And the concept of healing from trauma, was not something that was a part of society. So a lot of those men, carried an extraordinary amount of anger because they were never allowed to release it, process it, talk about it, deal with it. And, uh, and it left them like powder kegs. And, I was very similar. I grew up in an orphanage as well, and I had to deal with a lot of things at ages that it's even to this day, I'm like, "Did I really get through that?" And I used to be very angry, and, I mean, I used to fight a lot, and I ended up losing it once on a she was a woman that was bigger than me, and I buried her. I mean, I really hurt her, and I buried
Hmm.
her face in the snow, and I couldn't let her go because I was afraid of getting
Yeah.
hurt. She talked way too much about her black belt, apparently.
Yeah.
And in that moment, when I got pulled off of her by a friend of mine, a big football player, at the time, and he was like, "What are you trying to do, kill her?" And I was like, "No, I'm actually not trying to. I'm afraid," because she was like a foot taller than me. And I was so startled by my series of violent reactions and behaviors that I began to understand that I had to find a way to process my anger, and I could not allow the anger to rule the way that I would live, or it was going to destroy my life in one way or another. And I really believe that that's what a lot of those men were, they never got to that point where they understood that they had to do something with the anger. Because they weren't allowed to have emotions. So I think
Yeah.
an interesting story. But he was definitely reflective of the times, and I think he must have felt the military helped make him a man, even if some of the experiences that he was put through left a bad taste in his mouth, or his brother were put through. It still, I believe, gave him a life in many ways that he wouldn't have had. And to me, that's one of the beautiful things about the military is it can allow just about anybody to process a lot of their, demons enough to at least build a life for themselves. And of
Yeah.
course, these days, the conversation around mental and emotional health is completely different.
Yeah, sure. I'll leave the Day discussion here. One of the things he talked about, and this was in the wake of when I was growing up in the wake of Vietnam and everything. I was a small boy, but I was pretty pretty aware of what was going on through the 70s. And one of the things he always said about using military forces is three things you always want to make sure about. He said you go in to an area uh, with a kill list, and that is very brutal to say. But you can't go into an area and break up a fight. You can't go into an area and maintain stability. All you're going to do is get American service people killed, and you're going to get more people killed in that area. You have to decide, okay, there's starving babies with flies walking in and out of their mouth and all this stuff. Who's responsible for this? Okay, it's a corrupt regime that's taking all the aid that's coming into the country. Okay, those people got to go. And you go in there with the intention of killing them. You can't go in there and police a foreign country. You can't do it. And if you don't have the stomach for that, if that's too much of what you want to do, then you don't go in to begin with, because all you're going to do is get more people killed. The second thing you do is once you make this decision, somebody's got to get out. Somebody's got to die. These are bad people here. They got to go. You go in with an overwhelming force. You don't screw around. You go in with an overwhelming force. And the third step is the one that we always fail on, is when you're done, get the fuck out.
And stat.
That's that. And I think we have not learned those lessons yet. We simply have not learned those lessons yet. We always want to maintain stability. We always want to get involved in an area that is very hard to police, and we don't want to go home.
And a lot of our recent wars have not been over haven't truly been about the battle of good over evil. I'm not saying that they weren't at the heart, that the issue didn't have to do with bad over or good over bad or evil. It's that a lot of the wars were perpetuated, engineered, pushed to serve an agenda that had nothing to do with the American people or the way that we feel as a country about certain issues. I'm a huge fan of our military. I really am. I believe in that the country has to have a strong military. We have to honor, respect, and take care of our veterans. Should be very well funded. They should have the finest of everything. But I recognize that there's a military industrial complex and a lot of corporations that make a fortune off of war. I mean, it's what put America on the map in the first place is World War II, and us going in and rescuing and saving basically the world from evil. But there's truth in the fact that a lot of people get hurt in the name of making money. So it's a complex situation. But Memorial Day is an important holiday and deserves our attention, our respect, our honor.
Yeah. Like I said, I've struggled with it because I had that odd relationship and that odd series of events when I was a young man. And it always brings back, it's the one time a year I reflect a little bit on the old man, and which I just did. And I shared that with you. I hope it spoke to and had a worthwhile purpose in that a lot of sacrifices are made for the lifestyle that we have here. All right. Yes. I know you got a lot going on. A new book. How did you manage to write another one so quickly? What's the story behind that? Tell me about that.
A New American Dream is the name of my next book. It comes out in September, and it's about confronting the essential issues that are going on in America that are, drowning our younger generations. And the whole point of the book is to address those issues and share a roadmap for how we can move forward. I just, I care a lot about the country, and I'm very patriotic. We've been lost for a while, and a lot of the issues that we're dealing with are really coming to a head. I've talked a lot about it. Corporate greed and our paid off politicians are really sinking the country. and we need drastic change. And now is an incredible opportunity for that change to take place, especially because of AI. AI is going to change everything. So we might as well ride that pony into a new future, and that's really what the book is about. So I'm excited about it.
Well, it's going to be fun to watch the launch of this and to find out more about it. So here again, my wishes for your continued success, Shaman. As far as I am concerned, you can follow me on the platform formerly known as Twitter, now X. That's kind of like my social media home, at Billy Dees. You can find the Billy Dees podcast just about anywhere podcasts are found. Have a real, after Memorial Day, get a real good podcast episode coming up with an interview from a guy by the name of Ed Friedman. And he has written a book. Very interesting guy. And you know what? Do you know what one of his causes is? And I've never thought about this before. He's a playwright and an author, and he makes a lot of jokes about getting older. Well, one of the bits he did was in his book. I got a copy of the book to go through before the interview, and one of the bits he did was I went into a friend's bathroom, to use the bathroom, and this friend had way too many mirrors than what he needed in the bathroom, and I happened to notice this hole in the back of my head. And it's funny about the whole aging process and everything. It's funny. But he also he started this foundation, this nonprofit. He's retired now, but he started this nonprofit, and what they do is with real older folks is they give them a chance to act and participate in the arts and use their mind. And that this is something that has never really been geared at the aged before. It's always about the young and the youth and getting started in life and becoming a young, passionate artist. And this is something that has really revitalized a lot of these people, because they're, instead of just sitting there or staring at the TV, they're using their minds, which brings your energy level up. It brings your, and they're interacting with people. And I never considered that before, but he talks about that during the podcast. So I would very much encourage you to check that episode out. It comes out next week after Memorial Day. And it's for a publisher. It's for HO Press, Shorehouse Books. They do a great job helping independent writers. So that you got that to look forward to. So anyway, Shaman, you and I will be continuing to monitor the politics, and you can catch the Thursday night shows right here. And of course, you can catch them on the regular platforms sometime later, whenever you feel like it. You can listen to it while you're commuting or whatever. It's available there. Shaman, thank you very much for co-hosting again tonight. Thank you so much.
It was wonderful. I had a good time, as always. And thank you for sharing your Memorial Day story. I thought it was beautiful.
Sure.
And it's important that we share our experiences, because it is everyone's secret sauce. It's what you have to offer the world. There's not a perfect version of you, doesn't help anybody. The real experiences that we have are what helps other people. And so I think that's really amazing. And if people want to find out more about the work that I do, or pre-order The American Dream, A New American Dream, they can go to Shamanisis.com, and that's where all my projects are. So thank you, Billy, for having me again. I had a great time as always.
Awesome. It's always great having you. Check out the podcast when you can. And like I said, the interview with that author is coming up next week. And Shaman and I will return next Thursday. So until then, enjoy yourself and have a great Memorial Day weekend. Have a safe Memorial Day weekend. But also remember those veterans who paid the ultimate price to defend our country. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Billy Dees podcast. Follow Billy Dees on X @BillyDees for updates about the program.